I started out life fairly conventionally. I went to Oxford and then I did further degrees in Delhi University, and then I wrote my PhD on a kind of reverse anthropology, because tribal people have been studied a lot by anthropologists, obviously, and as I began to interact with them, I realized in that process of anthropologists studying them, there's a massive process of making them into objects, what we call objectification. So the whole knowledge of universities about indigenous cultures is warped. It's completely and utterly manipulated, really, and it takes tribal knowledge away from themselves and puts it in certain boxes that really is part of the power structure of, in part of what is happening, in a way, the genocide or the cultural genocide of tribal peoples going on now. Anthropology has played a role. And I suppose radical anthropologists who question what it means to study, what it means to be objective, I think are part of helping indigenous people support movements in a proper way. So I suppose that's partly what I do. That's how I came to my work. And in this place in Sussex University, the Centre for World Environmental History, I think it's given a fantastic space to bring together activists into an academy here in a way that we hope is completely equal, so different forms of knowledge can interact rather than the usual hierarchical forms of knowledge that actually are part of oppressive power structures. I guess I was among the group of people who set up this forum of bringing activists and academics together on an equal basis to open up the whole question of what is knowledge, especially what is knowledge about movements, about issues like, for example, fracking has been a big issue here. Another issue that hasn't been brought in is the badger cull. To me, I feel very strongly about that. How a lot of the science seems to support not culling the badgers, and yet, because of certain economic decisions that are hidden often, the debate has gone in the favour often of culling, which to me is, it's like another genocide of a species happening in our country. And to understand any issue, really, it needs a much more democratic opening up of what is knowledge. I think that understanding connection between local and global is always vital. And one of the issues that's been discussed here a lot is funding. That funding, how does funding come? Like my co-author Samarendra Das often says, funding determines knowledge too often. So things that are studied in universities, in science, it's more obvious, are things that industry or business want, and they choose the direction that the knowledge, this quote, knowledge is going to be created in. So activists are seen as more subjective, or they're partisan, or they've taken a position. And yet, in a way, they're linking here with here. Universities, since their beginning, have often been spaces of questioning, and that questioning, just how to encourage that, how to encourage students. Just because I'm the teacher, you don't have to take what I'm saying. Question everything I'm saying. I mean, when that attitude is more general, you know, it's wonderful. But there's with the kind of privatization of universities, of education, of knowledge in some ways, it's a constant struggle. And, you know, thank God this university and other universities are holding these spaces of democratic questioning of knowledge. Okay, people are listening to me because I've got a PhD from Oxford. People are listening to me in India because I got an MPhil from the Delhi School of Economics. And so one way in would be, okay, do a PhD, but I would say even to my worst enemy, I wouldn't want them to go through the trauma of doing a PhD sometimes, because it can be so lonely writing a huge, in effect, a book that only a few examiners are going to read. And then when you've written it, it's probably so full of academic jargon to please the examiners and the establishment that then it's very difficult to write it in a book form where really the knowledge is going to other people. So, but one way is to struggle with that and the contradictions within the academic system and find a way through and find links with more grassroots people so that the knowledge is something more collective. And that is something I really believe in.